I'd like to welcome you all to the webinar, and we're going to be discussing the graduate programs from the School of Economics. And joining us today, we have Professor Ron Davies, who's the head of the school, and he'll be discussing the school itself. And we also are joined by Dr. Orla Doyle, who will be going through the 3 taught graduate master's programs.
So my name is Ron Davies. I am the head of economics at UCD. So I just want to take a couple of minutes kind of to start with, give you an idea of what our school is like. So in terms of the composition of the school, we have about 30 staff, 5 of which work at our Beijing campus. So they spend part of the year in Dublin, part of the year in Beijing. And we are an extremely varied group of people. So we have staff that come from over 15 different countries. So you can tell I was not born in Ireland if you know your accents. I've been in Ireland for 15, 16 years now. And in terms of other sorts of diversity, half of our staff is female, which particularly in economics is rather unusual, and it's something that we pride ourselves in. And what I mean by that is we try to be very inclusive in terms of the way that we do our research, the way that we do our teaching. So why should you consider UCD for postgraduate training? First thing is, relative to undergraduate, postgraduate training has a very strong research component, and we are a very strong research department. We are the #1 school in Ireland in terms of research output. 5 of our economists are in the top 5% globally in terms of their research. And what sort of research do people do? It really runs across the board. So Orla does work on early childhood issues. I do a lot with international taxation, foreign direct investment, international trade. We have people that do health. We have people that do labor. We have people that do macro. We have people that do development, really across the board. In terms of sort of the approaches that people use, we have a strong behavioral group, which is why we have this master's in behavioral economics in particular. A lot of the school would have a focus on empirical methods, but we do have people that do theory, and then we have a lot of people like myself who jump both of those. And so in terms of the way that people approach research, there is a strong collaborative aspect of that. And because when you come in, part of the master's program is preparation to do a thesis. You can switch to do an internship towards the end if you'd rather that, but we do sort of pride ourselves in that. And so not only do we pride ourselves in the quality and the amount of research that we do, but we pride ourselves in the way we really try to communicate the skills needed for that through our teaching. Our staff are excellent teachers, evaluations are very good, and learning how to not just do the coursework, but to take that coursework into a research area is what makes econ a very employable degree to have. If you look at just in general, economists do the best, except for the engineers, in terms of postgraduate employment and starting salaries. And it's because of the abilities to take that research training into things like consulting work or things like government work or things like further academic work. And so those skills are very transferable in the ability to look at the data, come up with ideas about what the data is telling you, and then in addition, how to communicate that. And that's a really critical part of that. And that's a really critical part of what we aim to teach, in particular at the master's level. And sort of one of the reasons that our school is pretty successful in that is because we also have a lot of experience working with policy. So Orla does a lot of policy recommendations. Carl Whelan's one of our macro people. He does a lot both in terms of advising Irish policymakers as well as those in Europe. For myself, with the international tax stuff, I've done work within Ireland, within Europe, within the OECD, as well as other nations as well. I did a project with Slovenia looking at taxation and research and development that they do within their country. And that policy aspect of it is part of why, as we teach these things, it's not just, excuse me, the academic side of it, but it's really trying to make this relevant to the real world, relevant to careers, relevant to what you guys are looking to do with your lives. And the other way in which our programs try to introduce that is if you go the applied route through the master's program, you have the internship that can be done during the summer. So a year from now, you'd be doing that sort of thing. And that internship is a way to give you that leg up when you then go and look for jobs and as you progress in those careers. And Orla will talk about this a little bit more in terms of where some of our own graduates have gone in terms of jobs, but economists are everywhere. There are lots of economists in the private sector. In terms of consulting, you see a lot of people with master's degrees working in economic consulting. You see people in government jobs. You see people really across the board in terms of where they end up using the skills that we work to teach you. To give you an idea a little bit about the size of the master's program, last year we took in about 60 students. This year we actually have people who have accepted. It's a bit higher than that relative to last year. And then the other thing that you guys are as sick of hearing about as I am, which is the issue of COVID. We have staff that are advising the Irish government in terms of the development of the strategies for how the Irish economy and the Irish government is dealing with COVID. But at the moment, you're probably a little bit more worried about what it means in terms of your classes next year. The university is firming up plans, which are always a little bit sort of in flux because of issues surrounding government regulation and government recommendations. But the way our program works, the first thing that always happens every year is there's a mathematics boot camp. And this is just to get everybody the mathematical skills required in order to succeed in the rest of the program. And we always condense that into the first 2 weeks of term. What we're going to do with that is we are going to do that online, and we're going to start that September 7th. So even though actual lectures and term won't start until September 21st, we're going to go ahead and do that beforehand because it takes a little bit of time pressure off of the rest of the term so that people can focus on micro, macro, econometrics, whatever other courses they're taking, rather than have to jam as much in as we normally would. So it's to try to give you guys a little bit of breathing space. But once classes do begin, our expectation and our plan currently is that you will have live lectures in a classroom. Depending on the rooms that were given by the university and depending on how big the classes are, we may end up doing 2 sections. So, micro and micro rather than have everybody all at once. But what we are really planning on for this coming year is to have the in-classroom traditional lecture experience be the foundation of what we do. We will do our best to have some stuff online. We're working to decide exactly what will be online to support that. But it is that in-person interactive experience that really is what we're trying to make the focus of what we're up to. Now, who knows what's going to happen between now and autumn, but that is the plan that we're working under right now, and that is the plan we expect to be able to deliver. So I guess that's sort of the introduction I would like to have, and I think it's time to pass it over to Orla.
Thanks very much, Ron. So as I said, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, if you just type them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we will come to the questions. So anything that comes to mind during this discussion, please type in the questions. So I'd now like to hand over to Dr. Orla Doyle, who's going to talk about the 3 programs that we offer in the UCD School of Economics. So MSc Behavioral Economics, MSc Applied Economics, and also our MSc Quantitative Economics. Thank you, Orla.
Thanks, Emma. So hello, everyone. As Emma said, I'm the current director of the MSc programs in the School of Economics. And as you guys probably know, we do have 3 programs in Quantitative Economics, Behavioral Economics, and Applied Economics. And one of the questions I get asked most often is like, what are the differences between these 3 programs? Which program should I do? And generally, I'll talk about it more specifically, but just in terms of more career trajectories, like what one should you consider doing? The MSc in Quantitative Economics is really geared towards students who are planning on doing a PhD in economics afterwards. Okay, so we very much focus on the quantitative skills that you'll need to get through a PhD program in economics. So if you're planning on doing a PhD, Quantitative Economics is the one to do. If you, however, want to, say, get a job directly after your MSc program as a graduate economist, then the applied program is probably more suited to you. And again, if behavioral economics kind of speaks for itself, if you're interested in behavioral economics, which is this intersection between economics and psychology, then doing the MSc in behavioral economics means you could then go on to do a PhD more generally in economics or specifically within behavioral economics, or you can go and get a job as a behavioral economist or just a job as an economist, as many of our students do. So in terms of career trajectories, that's kind of the differences between the three programs. In terms of the actual content of the three programs, there are a lot of similarities between them, but also some differences. So we really, even though we have three separate programs, we really see them as one overall program. You're one class. You know, Ron said we had 60 students last year. We can sit, and that's across the three programs. We really see you as one class because you have a lot of classes in common. So for example, in your first semester, all students have to take microeconomics and econometrics and research skills. And you're sitting in the same class with all the other students for that as well. For quantitative and applied economics, the first semester is actually pretty identical. There's no differences. So all students have to take the three core modules of macro, micro, and econometrics and research skills, and then you choose one elective. The only difference in the first semester is that the students who are doing the MSc in Quantitative Economics can take courses offered by the School of Statistics, like in data programming, for example, or Bayesian statistics, which aren't available to the students doing applied economics or behavioral economics. So if you love maths, you know, quantitative economics or stats, quantitative economics is definitely for you. The real differences between applied and quantitative come into effect in the second semester. So in the second semester, the students who are doing quantitative economics have to take advanced macroeconomics, advanced microeconomics, and advanced econometrics, whereas the students in the applied course can basically choose any of our field options. They can take the advanced courses if you like, but you can also take any of the 12 other options that we provide in the second semester. So there's a lot more choice within the applied program than the quantitative program. So as I said, we have 12 different module options in the second semester, ranging from health and welfare economics, environmental economics, decision theory, behavioral economics, policy applications, international trade. So we have such, I think one of the advantages of our program compared to some other programs offered in Ireland, MSc programs that is that the sheer number of modules that we offer is much higher than most other universities. So if you have a speciality that you're interested in, like development economics or health, it's a good place to come because we offer those types of modules. Then the main difference between the applied economics and the quantitative economics masters, it really comes to the last semester, when you're the summer semester, as we call it. So the students who are taking the MSc in quantitative economics have to write a thesis. Okay, so you have to write a thesis because, again, remember, we're training you to do a PhD. So you have to write, you know, a substantial piece of work. Whereas the students who are doing the applied economics can either do a thesis or they can do an internship. So you can choose between the two. So it's up to you. I'll talk more about the internships in a moment. But just to say that it is possible for students to switch between the applied and the quantitative masters. So even if now you've accepted a place on the applied masters, but you're thinking, actually, you know what, halfway through the year, you might think, actually, I'd like to do a PhD in economics. It is still possible for you to switch halfway through the program, or even 3/4 of the way through the program, onto one of the other programs, as long as you've done the core modules for that program. So there's still an awful lot of flexibility. So don't worry about it too much about whether you should do applied or quantitative. You could still, you know, choose during the year. Behavioral economics is a little bit different from the other two master's programs in that we have a number of modules that only students taking the behavioral masters can do. And also they have a lot more core modules that they must take. So we have special classes for them, 4 special modules. One is on just a standard behavioral economics module. There's another on experiments in economics, where you learn how to do lab experiments and field experiments. There's another on topics in psychological science, and there's another on behavioral economics policy applications. So the types of modules that you take in the behavioral program are somewhat different than the ones in the applied and the quantitative program. And I should say that in the behavioral program, again, you can choose either to do a thesis or you can choose to do an internship as well. So again, that option is still there with the behavioral course. However, it's not possible to switch into the behavioral course once you've started and applied or quantitative, because as I said, there's these core modules you must take for behavioral that are only available to the behavioral students in the first semester. So that's kind of the main, if you like, similarities and differences across those three programs. In terms of how many students do internships versus a thesis, it's about 50-50. So about 50% do write a thesis and 50% do an internship. In terms of the internships, so you have to source your own internship, but we do have an internship coordinator who helps you access an internship. So there's a number of different organizations who have agreed to take on our students every year. So every year, the internship coordinator emails all of you to say, the deadline for this place is coming up, you know, on this date, here's what you need to do. You have to submit a cover letter and your CV, and you have to go through an interview. So it's just like getting a real job, if you like. You have to go for interviews and things like that. But we do have a number of places that have always taken our students from the Msc program. So I just wanted to give you an example of some of the types of places that our students are doing internships both this year and in previous years. So the types of places, and I made a list, so I'm gonna have to look at my list. Okay, so the Central Statistics Office, I've always taken our students. The Revenue Commissioners, the European Central Bank have typically taken 2 of our students. IBEC, a lot of our students do internships in the regulators. So that's the Commission for Aviation Regulation, the Commission for Communications Regulation, and the Commission for Regulation of Utilities. So, you know, we like regulation in Ireland, and they hire a lot of economists, so they take on our interns. But if you're interested in, say, environmental policy, then the Environmental Protection Agency also take our students for internships. If you're interested in farming, then Teagasc have also taken our students. Not everyone, though, goes into the more public sector. Some students do go into the private sector, and we have had students do internships in, say, Citibank, Fidelity Investments, AIB, and good bodies as well. If you're interested in more kind of consultancy, again, some of our students go into places like the Economic and Social Research Institute. Also, some of our students have been taken on by different government departments. So IGES, that's the Irish Government Economic and Evaluation Services. They also take on our students as interns in some years, as well as, say, the Department of Employment Affairs and Social Protection. So really, for your internships, you can either go the more government route, kind of the more public sector route, or the more private sector route. So it completely depends on your own preferences. And I would say of all the students who want to do an internship, almost all students do actually get an opportunity to do an internship. Some of these internships are paid, most of them are paid, but some of them are unpaid. And they last about 12 weeks in the summer. So typically, that's how the internship program works. So if you have any more questions about the internships, just enter a question to the Q&A session. There's just 1 or 2 other things I wanted to talk about, and that is seminars. So seminars are a really, really important part of the MSc program that we offer. In the School of Economics, we have a weekly seminar series that takes place every Friday afternoons, and all our MSc students are encouraged to take part and come along to that seminar. Now this year it's going to be a little bit different because our seminars will be taking place online as opposed to in person. But again, all of you guys will be encouraged to come on and look at the seminars. And this is where we basically invite, you know, international speakers and sometimes local speakers to talk about the current research. So you're really finding out what is the current research that's being conducted in this field today. So you're getting access to all that, which is really great if you plan on going and doing a PhD after you finish. Another highlight in the Msc year is our Jamboree. The Msc Jamboree is something that we've held for the last 2 years. And this is basically kind of the end of the year celebration for our Msc students. All the Msc students present their research in about 15-minute presentations, and we treat it like a conference. So there's parallel sessions. All our staff attend the seminars as well and give feedback, and then we have a big party at the end of the day. So it's a really highlight in the Msc year. So Ron talked a little bit about the composition of our staff in terms of gender divide. I want to talk about the gender composition of our students. So last year, about 36% of the class were female and the rest, 64%, were male. This is something that we're actively working on, and we are trying to make more parity in terms of the male-female divide. Recently, our school was awarded an Athena Swan Bronze Award. So this is basically in recognition of the policy we put in place and plan to put in place to improve gender equality within economics, the discipline of economics, about the undergraduate, the graduate, and the professional economist level as well. So that we were really delighted in the school to be awarded this. We're the only school of economics in Ireland to have this award. And another question I often get is about the international mix of the class. So about 50% of our students are Irish, and about 50% of our students are international, coming from many different countries. So last year, or this year, the students who are still here, they come from about 13 different countries. And the previous year, they came from about 20 different countries. So it's a really, really diverse cohort of students. We have lots of students from India, from China, from the US, Sweden, the UK, I'm trying to think of any other places, Malaysia. So yeah, students come from everywhere. And as I said, about 50% of the class are coming from other universities in Ireland or UCD as well. So just something that I did last week, because I wanted to give you some advice, or not advice, I wanted to let you know about where do our students get jobs when they finish. Not generally, but more specifically. So we conducted a survey last week of all the students who graduated last year, and we asked them, what are you doing at the moment? Now, again, it's probably not the best time to be asking students what they're doing at the moment because they may be affected by COVID. But just to give you an example of where some of our students have ended up who were doing the program last year. So we have some who are doing a PhD. One of our students is doing a PhD in Leuven in Belgium. We have one student who's gone on to work in AIB as an economist. We have another student who's working for the Irish Fiscal Advisory Council. Another student is in the Commission for Regulation of Utilities. One of our students actually got a job in the Behavioural Insights unit in London, and obviously that's a student who did behavioural economics. Another student has gone off to Seattle and is a business analyst working in Amazon at the moment. We have some students who who've started the European Investment Bank graduate program, and other students who've started working in the European Central, or the European Central Bank graduate program as well. We've also had one student who is now working as an economist in the Department of Education and Skills here in Ireland. One student is actually working in JPAL. I'm not sure if any of you guys have heard of JPAL. It's an international organization who works on kind of targeting poverty. It was set up by Esther Duflo and others. So Esther Duflo won the Nobel Prize for Economics this year, and she was one of the people involved in setting up JPAL. So one of our students is now working there in Southeast Asia in JPAL. We also have some students who are working in the Central Statistics Office here in Dublin, and some who are now working in the Economic, Social and Research Institute as well. So that's just to give you a flavour of the types of places our students end up once they complete the MSc programme. And Emma, I think I will stop there unless you have anything else you'd like me to cover.
Thanks very much, Orla. Great. Thanks very much, Ron and Orla. So we'll just move to the question and answer session now. We have a few questions in, and I suppose I just wanted to reiterate what Ron mentioned earlier in terms of the position of the university, in terms of our response to COVID-19 and in terms of welcoming students on campus come September. So we're committed as a university to delivering the best face-to-face teaching and campus experience possible within the public health restrictions that apply for the next academic year. We are continuing, as Ron said, to make preparations for all incoming students in September, and we will be looking at a blend of online delivery with small group interactions and lecturers, with access to the library and other university facilities. And as we mentioned, the graduate studies programs will all commence on the 21st of September, running for the first trimester for a 12-week term. So it is a fluid situation, and schools are developing their programs and delivery of modules in the next couple of weeks. So there will be more information available. So to contact the school directly if you have any specific queries in terms of the programs. So I am going to pop into the chat box just the university COVID-19 website so that you can refer to that, because that is the most up-to-date information that the university has. So I'll pop that into the chat box. And we just come to some of the questions now that we have. We had a question before that was submitted in terms of, I'll put this maybe to Orla, do you recommend any study materials before starting any of the programs?
Yes, and actually for the Maths and Stats Bootcamp, normally we send the students the material in advance of coming. So we send it in August usually. So the students have a chance to work through the material for the Maths and Stats Bootcamp in advance of starting the program, which gives them a bit of a head start, because, you know, you are essentially doing a whole course in 2 weeks rather than spread out over 12 weeks. So we like to give the students a heads up about that. So yeah, any student who is registered will be sent all the material for the Maths and Stats Bootcamp in advance.
Great. We have another question here in terms of, do you expect the internships to be affected by COVID-19?
So this is something that we have been dealing with obviously a lot at the moment. And yes, they have been, but we have managed to work our way around it. So some organizations have actually said that the students can still do the internships virtually. So for example, we have some students who are working the revenue commissioners, and they're doing those internships virtually. So just like we're working from home now, the students are going to be working from home as well, and having weekly or bi-weekly meetings, Zoom meetings with their employers as well, and having to submit reports every 2 weeks about what they're working on. So we have been managed to have a number of internships, but obviously some organizations that were just, because of the uncertainty, they were just not in a position to take on students because they're trying to deal with their own staff at the moment. So in those cases, for any student who wants to do an internship, what we actually have done is we've developed internship positions within the School of Economics ourselves. And we have about 7 different staff members who are now taking on an intern for the summer, who work on a research project with them, or not only research projects, but we'll work on projects with them during the summer. So at the moment, over half of our students have internships this year, which is the normal number. So we really haven't been affected that much by it.
Yeah, so it ended up being a little bit more about where they did their internship rather than if they did their internship.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And maybe a question for you, Ron, just in terms of, we weren't specifically covering it today, but just a question here about the course structure and program for the HDIP in economics. And is it similar to the master's courses, or how it works? Is it how different?
I was afraid you were going to ask me that one because I don't know the answer. I'm going to give an answer, which is that no, it's quite different. My understanding of the HDIP, and Orla might be able to back me up, is that essentially it's in a year, here's all the stuff in an undergraduate degree in economics we think you need to take to go on and do graduate work. So it's a quite different thing.
Yeah, no, I'd reiterate, it's completely different from the master's. You're taking undergraduate level modules. You don't take any master's level modules because it is to prepare you for taking the master's program.
And another question we received, Orla, previously, in terms of how students might look at sourcing a PhD after their Msc in Quantitative Economics.
Yeah, so we have our own PhD director, Ben, in the School of Economics. What? Oh, there will be someone.
I thought you forgot Ben's name. It hasn't been long since we've seen each other, Orla.
Just being informal, Ben. Answer, yes, Ben answer. And every year, so he comes in and talks to the master's students. So we have one of our Friday classes is him coming in before it's before Christmas, and he basically tells students about how to apply for a PhD. He also talks to them about whether it's a good idea financially to apply to do a PhD, like looking at the economic returns to a PhD and things like that. I've sat in on his talk. It's really, really good. So Ben is there to give advice to students about doing a PhD program, either in UCD or beyond. And, you know, lots of our students have gone on and done PhDs in really great places. One of our students went to UCL, London. We had New York University, EUI in Florence, Leuven, as I mentioned. So our MSc students can get placed in really good PhD programs around the world with full funding.
The other thing, just to follow up on that, is everybody, when you're doing the thesis, you're assigned a supervisor, and your supervisor helps you, guide you through the thesis process. That's, again, somebody else to ask. And, you know, if you are interested in that, everybody on staff has a PhD. We like talking about it. Just ask around. Everybody is there willing to help.
Great. And just maybe one for you, Orla, in terms of all our programs are offered on a part-time basis, and I suppose just how feasible are the part-time graduate programs for students who are working full-time?
Yes, if you are working you can do a PhD program if you're working full-time, but you have to have an employer who will give you the flexibility to go to classes and to give you time off when you have your exams. So at the moment, some of our part-time students are working full-time, but their employer lets them go to class. So I should say our part-time program is offered Monday to Friday. There's no evening classes, there's no weekend classes. You sit in the same classes as the full-time students. So there's no differences in terms of the full part-time and full-time students in terms of the timing of lectures or anything like that. So it does make it harder to do the part-time program if you do have a full-time job. But again, if you have a nice employer who is supporting your MSc program, then they do need to give you some time off to attend classes. In terms of the time commitment, you know, if you're doing the part-time class, you're doing 2 to 3 modules every semester instead of doing 5 to 6 modules. So it's half the workload. But you have complete flexibility about when you do your classes. So you can choose to do more in one year, less in another year. You can choose when you, like what you want to take and when you want to take. So it's a lot of flexibility about that. But I would seriously consider, if you have a full-time job, you need to talk to your employer about how you can arrange that.
One thing to sort of think about is, especially this coming year, although we do intend for lectures to be the primary way in which we deliver the material, there's most likely going to be some degree of online aspect to it. And so if someone is working part-time, that may facilitate that, make it a little bit easier, because you could watch pre-recorded material at a time that suits, whereas it may be more difficult to get away in order to get into the lecture hall. And that the other reason we're thinking about that aspect of what we're doing is because there may be people who are looking to come to Ireland from abroad, and it may take a little bit more time than usual to achieve that. So.
And we just have one other question. So Orla, you mentioned that the 3 master's classes, combined classes, about 60, and it has an international and Irish students combined. So one of the questions here is, will there be any socials at the start of term to help the course participants, I suppose, meet each other before the term starts?
Yeah, this is something that we do every year. So I mentioned a jamboree at the end of the year, but we actually start with something at the beginning of the year. This year, that might look a little bit different, but I'll tell you what we normally do anyway. So we have an induction that's on the Friday before lectures start. So lectures start on Monday. We have this induction on Friday afternoon, where all the students come together, and the director of the program, usually me, talks to the students about the program, you know, how it works and what it's going to look like in the next couple of weeks. And then after that, we have a social. So all the students come together. We normally go to a local bar and restaurant, and we have food and we have drinks, and all the staff attend, all the PhD students attend. And it's really that social event for getting people to talk to one another and to get to know one another. So we've done that every year at the start of our master's program as well. We take photographs and do lots of things like that. This year, yeah, we obviously intend to do something similar. If we have to do it on a smaller scale where we have 2 groups, we'll do 2 groups. Obviously, that so everyone is appropriately distanced from each other. Might make it harder to go to the pub, but we'll try what we can.
We'll pray for a sunny day. We'll stand outside.
Yeah.
Great. So I think that's all the questions. Ron, was there a final word that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah. One thing I did want to mention is we do generally hire some master's students to do undergraduate tutorials, and we are actually likely to be needing more than our usual number for that this coming autumn. So if you are interested in doing that, that is one of the things that let us know. And depending on sort of supply and demand, there might actually be some additional opportunities there for you as well. Great.
Thank you, Ron. So I think we're going to finish up there. And I'd just like to thank our attendees for viewing. And I'd like to thank Professor Ron Davis for his contribution, and also Dr. Orla Doyle. I will be following up with the recording to everybody who has registered for the event. But if you have any questions, you can filter them through myself. You have my email address, emma.donovan@ucd.
Or you can just email us directly, so economics@ucd.ie. My email is econhead@ucd.ie. Just email us directly. We're not hard to find.
That's great. That's super. Well, thank you very much for participating, and Thank you for viewing.
Take care, everyone.
Bye. See you in September.